Every week, college football games hinge on a single word.
Touchdown! Touchdown, Texas! Touchdown, Oklahoma! Touchdown! Touchdown! Touchdown, Wisconsin! Touchdown! 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 Touchdown, Stanford! Touchdown! Touchdown, Alabama! Touchdown, Notre Dame! Touchdown! Wow!
This is Touchdown Radio. Here's Gino Torretta and Taylor Zarzour.
Touchdown Radio Tailgate, college football week 13 is here. He is the 1992 Heisman Trophy winner, Gino Torretta. I am Taylor Zarzour. We're getting you ready for rivalry week. Don't say that after you put some brown stuff in the eggnog this time of year, because it can be very tricky to say. It can be tricky to say without any the brown stuff, that's for sure. What has to be on your plate in the next couple of days? I get more excited about the leftover sandwich than I do anything else. How about you?
There's no question. I've always told you it's not necessarily the meal. You eat the meal early,
right? And
then it's always the after dinner snack for the late night game with the turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, all mashed together. Now, as you know, I have been poisoned or spoiled with the best sourdough in the world from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm very disappointed to say that nobody can reproduce it. And one of those with the sourdough roll is absolutely the best turkey sandwich on the planet.
What's the Boudin? What's the name of that place?
Boudin is the place that we redirected. Let's see, we had a game down south at Stanford. We went north into the city to get some bread, and then went back down to Stanford.
Well, we did. I don't even know what the name of the bowl game is called, or even if they have that game.
Kraft Fight Hunger Bowl, I believe it was.
That's right, the Emerald Bowl or whatever it was. It was they were promoting it as being in San Francisco. Let me make this clear for everyone listening. The San Francisco 49ers are not telling you the truth. They are not playing in San Francisco. They are playing in Santa Clara. Yeah, and that's like an hour from Boudin's, which is on the water near the wharf in the heart of downtown San Francisco.
We got a nice tour of the city, though. I gave you a nice little tour of the city.
It takes a solid hour to get to where the 49ers play. All right, let's get to week 12 before we get to week 13. Week 12 was sort of seen as kind of a throwaway week, Gino, that none of these games were going to be competitive. Instead, it turned into quite possibly the weekend of the year in college football. Thankfully, we have a vice president at Touchdown Radio who suggested that Touchdown Radio broadcast the Ohio State-Maryland game, which turned into a thriller last weekend. And the Buckeyes get out of College Park alive with a double-digit win, but it certainly didn't feel like that. Brett Bielema is still upset about the officiating at the end of the Michigan-Illinois game. Michigan kicks a field goal in the last seconds of the game to win. TCU runs on the field to kick a last-second field goal to beat Baylor and stay undefeated. And Tennessee gets destroyed by a South Carolina offense that I've never seen that before. I've done plenty of South Carolina games, never seen the Gamecock offense play like that. What was most surprising to you out of all the? I guess I should throw Georgia in here too, right? Because their offense.
The top teams didn't play well. I don't know if it's so much of, I think that when we were talking about, okay, which game do you pick this weekend? Because it was really kind of between Michigan and the Ohio State game. Mm-hmm. And we thought Maryland would have the better offense and Ohio State was ranked higher. But I think, is it both Michigan and Ohio State were looking ahead? They've heard so much about the game that, okay, these were just, kind of their last pit stop on the way to the game this weekend. And then Georgia on the road. I think a lot of it is, at least for Ohio State and Georgia, a lot of teams, like we've talked about with Alabama, they haven't played well. Teams haven't played well on the road. And it's kind of, that to me is kind of surprising from the standpoint of when you're at this point in the season, you see that trophy and you have a chance for that trophy. And you get laser focused when you do go on the road, but it doesn't seem like that has happened this season. But as good and great teams will do, they can beat you without their best stuff. And I think that Ohio State game, it was the offensive line just kind of laid on Maryland, really didn't come out, but when they turned it on, they can turn it on. So I would expect totally different team this weekend against Michigan.
Do you, though? Because I was going to ask you if you think teams are beat up this time of year. A couple other upsets to mention. I watched Vanderbilt beat Florida, and North Carolina lost at home to Georgia Tech, who's only a 5-win team. And we saw this across college football. You're right about the road environment, I think, is a factor. Certainly it was in Columbia, South Carolina on Saturday night. But I also wonder, Gino, if you would subscribe to the theory that these teams are a little beat up this time of year, which makes me wonder, are we going to potentially see more upsets this week too?
Well, I don't think there's any question. Nobody's 100% healthy. You take at Ohio State with Henderson and Mayan Williams, their two top backs, both of them dinged up. And, I think that is a factor everywhere. And it seems that maybe the top teams don't have, or maybe all teams in college football don't have that second line of depth that we're used to seeing, and I would say that, that's the strength of the American Conference and the Sun Belt and some other teams where, hey, with free reign and with transferring and not having to sit out, you're seeing, kids that were highly recruited leave major programs because they don't see a spot for them on the roster, and they're not going to sit and just wait. They want to go somewhere else. And I think it's hurt teams all over. And at this point in time, I don't think there's any team that's 100% healthy. But it's kind of amazing because, like you said, it's like this week is normally like this past week is normally one of the worst weekends to try to pick. Okay, let's pick a good game. And you're like, oh, there's no good games on the schedule. It's like, Middle East.
Turned out to be great.
Yeah, Middle East, state university from somewhere you've never heard of that's on Alabama or some top team schedule. But it turned out, like you said, to be great. South Carolina, I was like, did they play the Panthers in Carolina with that many points?
It's crazy. That offense was humming on Saturday night. It's great to see a program that I've seen a lot of the last couple of years look like that on offense. Congratulations to Oklahoma, to Arkansas, Memphis, Middle Tennessee. You sort of just gave them a shout out, by the way. BYU and Utah State, as well as Texas Tech, Wisconsin, Appalachian State. They all punched their tickets to bowl games. And a big congratulations to USC, UTSA, Boise State, and Fresno State. They punched their tickets to their conference championship games. I got to scroll forward in the notebook here. There's still a couple of spots up for grabs. The Big 12 championship game, if K-State wins, they will play TCU. USC is in the championship game in Las Vegas in the Pac-12. There's still a couple of things that could happen here. You got the Civil War, Oregon State. If Oregon wins, they're in. If they lose, Utah and Washington could be in the picture. We know Georgia's playing LSU next week in Atlanta. We know Clemson's playing North Carolina here in Charlotte. Big Ten championship game. Let me just make it simple. If Purdue wins, Purdue's in. On the west side, on the east side, the winner of Ohio State, Michigan, you know that. The American on Friday, Tulane, Cincinnati winner hosts the American championship game, most likely against UCF, if UCF can beat USF on Saturday night. Sunbelt, it's Coastal Carolina versus Troy or South Alabama. The Jaguars still have a chance. I'm a little disappointed here because Coastal Carolina plays James Madison this weekend, but JMU is not eligible for the game. That's ridiculous, by the way. You shouldn't be penalized for jumping up to the FBS and being good when you jump up there. And then we'll get to Maction in just a minute. There's an update there. Mountain West, Fresno State will play at Boise State next week. And then finally in Conference USA, UTSA is waiting on who they will play. It could be, it'll be either Western Kentucky or North Texas that they play next weekend. It's exciting. That to me is really exciting about this week. Of course, you got all the rivalries, Gino, but all the implications of who gets to go play in the conference championship game next week is also fun.
Well, there's no question, and the iterations of the college football playoff and the top four. I think that Tennessee's loss to South Carolina, I think that brings in the opportunity. Is Clemson too far out of it? You look at some of the rankings that came out. I don't know. To me, I still head scratch and even looking forward, a team like LSU, are they in? Things like that. It's like we haven't played Ohio State and Michigan yet because I think some people think, well, the loser is going to be out of the top 4. Well, we haven't seen the game. And I would caution anybody to just say, well, the loser is out. And I think that you have to see how this game plays out. But the greatest thing about college football is we get shockers every week. I mean, the bulk of the season the last 2 years has been unranked teams shocking ranked teams. You look at Notre Dame beating Clemson, this year, this late in the season. The start of the year was fantastic this year. So I think that, it bodes to me where the expansion couldn't happen fast enough. And just based on, if the season ended today, some of the matchups, I mean, I would be like, man, who wouldn't want to go to those games?
Well, it's a good point that you raised, because there'd be more games that mean more this weekend if that were the case. And in the group of 5, you would look at Tulane, Cincinnati, and say, this is a massive game to get to the playoffs on Friday. Right. You'd look at UCF. If they can beat USF, that could be a chance for them to still get to the playoffs. And who knows, maybe even a Coastal Carolina from the Sun Belt could crash the party if their ranking was better than those other teams we just referenced in the American. I do want to also salute Ohio. The Bobcats beat Bowling Green on Tuesday night to get to the championship game in the MAC. They'll play Toledo, and also congratulations to Miami of Ohio, who is headed to a bowl game by winning on Tuesday night. So those things are always fun to keep track of. As for rivalry week, I got it. We're going to talk to Brett McMurphy about this whole Lane Kiffin thing. The Egg Bowl, of course, on Thursday night that you can hear here on Sirius XM. That game has implications because of a coaching standpoint, but from just a standpoint of how much the games matter, Gino, there's a couple that I'm looking at. Ohio State, Michigan is obviously the biggest, one of the biggest of the season. Maybe you would argue it's the very biggest of the season in college football, given the implications and the college football playoff being on the line. But I'm also looking at that USC Notre Dame game on Saturday night. I still think the Trojans have a great path towards the playoffs. So those are the two I'm most excited about. How about you?
Yeah, there's no question. But you look at other games like Friday. I mean, Baylor at Texas. I mean, like, which Texas team is going to show up? I mean, to me, it's like some of the Big 12 finishes, obviously with TCU last week. I mean, running their kicker on the field. You know how many times that's practiced in the course of a season and never used? And you know how many times the kicker just duck hooks one from rushing onto the field, or 10 guys run out and it's not done. But to execute that at the end of a game, to stay undefeated, I mean, that's so good by TCU to do that on the road. Every game, you mentioned like Georgia Tech. How did they beat North Carolina? I mean, it's like you're seeing a team that's a lot better than it was at the start of the season.
Yeah.
Georgia didn't play well last week. Are they going to, not play well? And are we going to hear the upset of all upsets, next week or this weekend? I love it. I mean, I just think, then you talk about Clemson, South Carolina. Clemson's like, okay, we have a loss. We're playing South Carolina, who's got 4. Okay, if Spencer Rattler does what he does this week, I mean, not to say, I mean, the strength of Clemson is their defense, but I don't think Clemson's offense wants a shootout with anybody. They haven't shown they can have a shootout with anybody. They've shown they can win games at the end and close games, but they don't want a shootout against South Carolina.
Yeah, all those games will be fun this weekend, and we'll make some picks on them coming up a bit later. A rally by Zarzour this past weekend has given me a slight advantage. That's because you
threw in the extra, the Montana
State game. You went against the Bobcats.
I picked my gutty little bros. I did have it right. I had it wrong. Coach Erickson went to Montana State, but my old teammate Tim Houck
went to the Grizzlies.
Went to Montana. So I went with the mascot that I knew.
You teased the playoffs. I want to talk about the rankings coming up in just a minute, and I want to go through the path for the teams that are still alive in the college football playoff. We'll do that next when Touchdown Radio Tailgate continues on Sirius XM Channel 84.
Hey, college football fans, Original Penguin is now the official game day gear for Touchdown Radio. Original Penguin. You can be an Original Penguin. Your next tailgate, go to originalpenguin.com, use promo code TDRadio22 and get 20% off your order. So you can either use it as your tailgate or when you get to tee up the little white ball after the college football season, and that is upcoming soon. Originalpenguin.com.
Yes, it is. That's Gino Torretta. I'm Taylor Zarzour. We are getting you ready for the games here in week 13 of the college football season, the end of the regular season in college football. For everybody not named Army and Navy, we'll certainly pay attention to that in a couple of weeks. All right, let's pay attention to the rankings right now. It's no surprise to see Georgia number 1, Ohio State's at 2, Michigan's at number 3, TCU is at number 4, LSU is at number 5, USC is at 6. Then you have Alabama at 7, Clemson at 8, Oregon 9, and Tennessee falls all the way down to number 10 after getting blown out against South Carolina last week. Before we talk about all the paths to the playoff, Gino, do you have any issue with the rankings this week?
Well, I don't. I mean, I know it's going to change, and what I would say is, I think a conference championship in the pocket of USC at 1 loss, and I think a conference championship in the pocket of Clemson with 1 loss, to me, should vault both of those teams in front of LSU and Alabama. That's me. And if history serves me
you're
right,
assuming LSU is losing to Georgia in that.
Yeah, I'm just saying right now, I would say both of those teams based on, having 1 loss. That's why I said it's not really, you can discuss, hey, what should be or what shouldn't, but LSU's got another game left, with the conference championship game against Georgia. Because I think, to me, the debate comes into, if Georgia wins out, the loser of Ohio State, Michigan, that's when the debate, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, the debate for 4 is going to include the loser of that game. And if, my memory serves me right, and, I may have some CTE in there, but I think the committee always said they valued conference championships tremendously. And they have vaulted teams that won conference titles up a few spots at the end of this thing to, get us the top 4. But, Tennessee, obviously they hammered LSU and beat Alabama head to head. Now, is the committee saying, well, Hendon Hooker's got a knee injury and they're a different team without Hendon Hooker? I think that's part of it. Okay, well, that's fine. But say that. I mean, the average college football fan knows that. You're without the quarterback that, threw, I think, 1 or 2 interceptions the entire season of 35 tuds, and, is probably top 5 for the Heisman right now. So I get that. So I think there's so many, I don't know, it seems like this season, there are so many machinations of what could happen with the Final Four, more than any year, it seems like, with the playoff. And we're talking about conference championship games. They haven't gotten through rivalry week. I mean, we just sat there last week and watched Ohio State held their breath. Michigan held their breath. Georgia, held their breath. So there's so much football. That's why I don't get kind of worked up. To me, if I'm looking at it, and I think the conference championship games and titles should matter. They've told us that matters, so we'll see if that matters in the next few weeks.
Okay, I'm going to go through the path here for you real quick. I think there are 10 teams.
Hold on, no, I need to get a notepad. I know your path.
You might need to put a little something brown in that eggnog if you're going to listen to all this, but I do want to just to kind of go through this because I think fans will enjoy this, and I'm going to try to keep it as simple as I can so that everybody can understand it. Georgia went out. Obviously, they're the number 1 seed. Or if they lose one of the last 2, I still think they're in. I really think they're in that position. Some may say, well, if they lose to LSU, they might get thrown out of the playoff. There's no way. It's like last year. The last year they lost in the SEC championship and still made it to the playoff. I think they put themselves in the same position again. Win out or lose one of the last 2. That's Georgia's path. So that's easy. Ohio State, here's the second team. And this is the same for Michigan, by the way. Exactly the same for Michigan. I think Ohio State may have a little bit better path because their schedule's a little stronger. The Notre Dame win is much more helpful. Michigan doesn't have one of those non-conference games. Ohio State win out or maybe get in by losing a nail-biting thriller to Michigan and or losing a Big Ten championship thriller. I think Ohio State and Michigan are in a similar position. Again, I would give the Buckeyes a little bit more of an advantage if they lost a game. Now let's get to TCU. TCU went out. Simple. Or maybe still get in by losing to Iowa State and winning the Big 12 title, but they would need a lot of help. LSU, USC, and Clemson would all have to lose in order for them to get in with a loss. Seems almost impossible, right, for TCU to win or to lose a game and still get into the playoff. Now let's get to the teams outside the top four. LSU, very simple, Gino, went out. They're the easiest one of all these 6 teams that I have listed here. Do you believe that if LSU beats Georgia, they're in the playoff?
You know, I don't know.
Would be a bigger win in college football this year.
I agree, but man, wouldn't that be hard to see how much they got thumped at home
by
against Tennessee?
Yeah,
and to have those 2 losses, and I just think it would be really tough if you have a 1-loss Pac-12 champ and you have a 1-loss ACC champ. And a 1-loss loser, Michigan, Ohio State in a close game where you'd say, you know what, we're going to put LSU in front of those few teams. But
you got to win against Georgia,
at this point,
a win against Alabama in that scenario.
This isn't a math problem. You know, we have multiple weeks left. This isn't a math problem of, you know, if this happens, then this, just a simple hypothesis. I mean, this is like X to the nth power, and the power is like 6 or higher. You know, one of those algebra problems you had as a kid, and you're like, all right, dude, just give me a calculator. I'm not doing this.
I think they would be, but this is my opinion. So LSU went out, they'd be in. USC went out and LSU or TCU loses. And Ohio State and Michigan wins convincingly. The winner of that game wins convincingly. I think they need a couple of things to break. And by the way, it wouldn't surprise me if all those things broke. In fact, if I had to make a prediction today, I would say they will break that way. And USC is the 4th team in the college football playoff. I think they're in great position to get there. And how great would that be for college football if you had the biggest name on the West Coast in the college football playoff? We've never had that. I mean, we've had Oregon, we've had Washington in the playoff, but they haven't been there very long. It'd be a different story to have USC. Clemson went out. TCU, LSU, and USC all would need to lose in order for them to get there. Oregon, similar situation. They would need TCU, LSU, and Clemson all to lose in order to get there. And now then there's Alabama and Tennessee, and this is going to be the most chaotic. Alabama needs to beat Auburn. TCU, LSU, USC, Clemson, and Oregon all need to lose. And if you're Tennessee, it's basically the same thing. You would need Alabama to lose to Caddy and the Auburn Tigers on Saturday, and need all those other conference champions to fall in their conference championship game. So it's a long road to hoe in those scenarios.
And that's the reason you just watch the game on Saturday and say, okay, now where are we at? I'm just saying,
so
based on
let me just ask you this. What do you think the chances are we're going to see something chaotic in the next 2 weeks? Do you think
100%.
chalk's going to fly? Oh, you do?
100%. I don't think we're going to see all of those machinations that some of these teams need, but 100% something's going to happen that we didn't prognosticate. I just look at it, to me, as like, based on the rankings, you think I have a problem. If you're evaluating Clemson, to me, it's Clemson, USC should be the debate of the 5th best team right now. They're both 1-loss teams. Now, is that all going to change based on how they play in the next couple of weeks? Yes, it's going to change. But that's where I think the loser of Ohio State, Michigan, has got a claim to be in that 4th spot. You essentially got 4 or 5 teams. To me, it should be a 1-loss conference champion that should be in that debate. But I know where you're coming from with the LSU and if they ended up beating
I don't
Georgia.
I don't disagree with your logic. I'm trying to tell you what I think the committee will do in that situation. The fact that LSU got their doors ripped off, I don't care what time the game is. It's not my problem that the game started at 11 a.m. and people weren't losing their minds in Baton Rouge. They got their doors blown off and blown out of the stadium. Clemson got penalized severely for getting their doors blown off at Notre Dame. LSU doesn't seem to be penalized nearly as much as Clemson was. So I'm not disagreeing with you about the logic that you're using about a conference champion. I'm telling you, if LSU beats Georgia, they're going to be in the playoff. I mean, whether you like it or not, I'm telling you, I think that's clear. The committee has made that clear, given that they're ranked 5th here today.
So let me ask you.
I don't think that's going to happen, though.
Just with that, would LSU go to 3 and Georgia go to 4?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So they wouldn't play each other?
I think they probably would be 3 and 4 in that scenario, but I think Georgia would probably still be ahead of LSU because they'd only have one loss in that scenario, and Georgia still would have the significant victory over Tennessee in the middle of the season and the blowout win against Oregon to start the year. So I probably would give Georgia a slight advantage there, but I think we're talking about something that's not going to happen. I'd be really surprised if Georgia loses to LSU next week, but we'll get to that next week. Let's keep talking about this week. Let's get Brett McMurphy in and talk to him about what's going on with Lane Kiffin and the rest of the coaching. Is Jimbo Fisher going to be the coach of Texas A&M next year? We need to ask Brett about that. And then there is nobody that is better about prognosticating the bowl games than Mr. McMurphy. So we're going to bring him in when Touchdown Radio Tailgate continues on Sirius XM, Channel 84. It is Touchdown Radio Tailgate with Gino, Torretta. I'm Taylor Zarzour. We're proud to bring in Brett McMurphy from the Action Network, who's as good as it gets when it comes to college football reporting. Brett, happy Thanksgiving. Most importantly, let's start with who's playing in the Wasabi Fenway Bowl.
Well, of course, Taylor, as you know, that's an ACC versus an American game. So right now I've got Duke and East Carolina there. So go with the over.
We'll go through some of these projections that Brett makes. You can check out all of them on actionnetwork.com. You can just go to his Twitter and just hit the link, and he's got all of those projections there. I'm going to keep grilling him on some of these, throughout the next 8 or 9 minutes. Brett, what about this Lane Kiffin stuff that's going on right now as he gets ready to coach the Egg Bowl as the Ole Miss Rebels? Do you believe that's the last time he'll coach Ole Miss?
You know, I do, Taylor. I mean, I've heard from various people that I trust that Lane to Auburn has been basically agreed upon. I'm not going to say it's a done deal because I don't think anything has been signed. You know, but then you see Kiffin, push back on Twitter the other day. And I've talked to people who said, why would Lane push back if he's going to Auburn? Isn't he admitting he's staying at Ole Miss? And they're like, well, no. The guy reported that he's already made a decision. He's got an offer. Kiffin can honestly say that he hasn't made a decision yet. But ultimately, yeah, I believe he will be at Auburn next year. I've been even told the amount of money they're going to throw at him. I don't want to put that out there, but yeah, I would say if you're asking me right now, I don't think there's any way Kiffin will be at Ole Miss next year or even probably coaching the bowl game.
Brett, does college football need to, like I said to Taylor, we were talking off the air and I just said, doesn't the NFL have rules against this? I mean, is the NC2A going to have to step in at some point in time? Because however many jobs we have open, was there 8 jobs we have open right now? And you're going to have this, and you feel bad for both parties. I mean, I can remember when Butch Davis left, I think when Nick Saban left the Dolphins and went to Alabama, I mean, they literally will say, I'm not leaving and be on a private jet in 15 minutes after the meeting. So
Lincoln Riley last year.
Yeah. And that 15 minutes, you can't fire up a private jet and get it ready to go. So I'm curious from your standpoint for the good of college football and just the general health of these coaches to stop allowing this until the regular season is at least over with.
I don't know what you can do. It's funny. Mike Leach, before the season, he remarked about how college athletes right now are the most entitled, have the most freedom of any athletes in the history of the world, as only Mike Leach could describe. And he's right, because there are no restrictions on when they can leave. They can switch teams right away. They can get paid, whatever amount of money people want to pay them, which is great. But yeah, even the NFL, the NBA, all those pro leagues have guidelines or rules or restrictions. We don't have it in the college game. So Gino, I agree. There should be something you should be able to do, but you know how that is. People are they're going to work around it. If you say, okay, it's, similar to the NBA. If you say a guy can't sign on June 1st, it doesn't mean he's not talking to teams in May. And I think the same thing would happen in college. Maybe it doesn't get announced until a specific date, but I think all these deals would be in place anyway. You would just have a date that everyone would agree on when they could finally take effect.
More on the coaching carousel in just a second, but to the most important line of questioning, who's playing in the San Diego County Credit Union Holiday Bowl?
Holiday Bowl. This is a big year for them, because last year they got screwed. UCLA pulled out literally 4 hours before kickoff. NC State was very pissed off about that. So this year, obviously, UCLA will not be returning. I'm looking at North Carolina going out west to play the Utah Utes.
Oh, wow, that's a good one there. Will Jimbo Fisher be back at Texas A&M as the head coach next year?
Man, it's I'm going to say yes, because I can't imagine that they want to pay $90 million. But if they want to pay $90 million, then no, he won't be. But if you do pull the plug on him, who are you going to get? I mean, I'm sure there's a number of people that would go there, and they're going to pay him crazy amount of money. I mean, this is the issue that happens when you pay somebody that much money. And what's weird is if Jimbo was making half that amount, I don't think he would receive as much criticism as he does now. But because of the money, there's a lot of very high expectations, and rightly so. But yeah, Taylor, I think he'll be back. I don't think they would pull the plug that soon. But certainly this would be his mulligan.
I'm curious with regard to his situation. Is the toxicity that bad to where Jimbo and Texas A&M just say, hey, listen, I know 90 million is exorbitant, and I know you owe me. Similar to Paul Chris taking a lot less and just saying, okay, if you're going to buy me out. Because it's not about money at this point in time. He's made a ton of money. I'm just curious if he kind of feels, hey, for his betterment and the school's betterment, he says, okay, let's agree upon a lesser number and we can mutually part ways.
Yeah, Gino, I mean, that's certainly a possibility. And if the frustration level is there for Jimbo, if it reaches that point, yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, you could cut that number in half, whatever the number is. I mean, more power to him. Everyone should make as much money as possible. But yeah, I think that would be a way to do that. Usually when stuff like that happens, it gets out somewhere, somehow, and you really haven't heard that. So it appears that, he will be back next year. Now that I say that, I'm sure in the next 15 minutes, there will be a report that Jimbo's not returning. But yeah, I think he'll be back another year.
Yeah, you did a good job of explaining through that and calling some of their games. I think you're right about where they are and where they're headed. Brett, who's playing in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, and also walk us through the group of 5 process here and why no conference other than the American seems to have a shot at this.
Yeah, so basically it's because of the tie-ins with all of the other New Year's 6 games. The Cotton Bowl is guaranteed to get the highest rated group of 5 champion. And so, yeah, you're right. In the college football playoff rankings that came out Tuesday night, the American has 3 teams in the top 25, Tulane, UCF, and Cincinnati. So basically, the winner of the AAC would remain in the top 25. Coastal obviously is not in the top 25. They don't have any top 25 opponents left. UTSA could be a possibility. Boise State, those are the other possible group of 5 champs. So it's going to be, whoever you think is going to win the AAC. I'm projecting Tulane right now. And the opponent is, I'll try to make this very quick. It's the highest rated at large team from the college football playoff rankings after you take out the playoff teams, after you take out the highest ranked teams from all of the Power 5 conferences, because those teams will go to the Rose, the Sugar, and the Orange. And so right now I'm projecting that team to be Tennessee. And what that means is I think Alabama and LSU will go to the Sugar and Orange, which picks before the Cotton. Tennessee then would be there. Now, if Tennessee loses to Vanderbilt, that will create a huge domino. Penn State could move up to that spot. But right now, Tennessee's there. And it's based on the highest ranked team. How will the committee rank Tennessee, next week after they play a game without Hendon Hooker? Will they ding him for that, or will they keep him there for what they've done, obviously, this season?
Brett, we're running out of time. We have about 30 seconds left. What is Deion Sanders going to do for a living this time next year?
Coach football, but I don't know where. He's talked to Colorado. He's talked to USF. I think he would like to coach at Mississippi. I don't think Ole Miss is going to happen. He'll be coaching football. I don't know where. I think he would prefer to be at the FBS level. We'll have to see. Obviously, he's a huge name. It would be a huge get for somebody. But stay tuned on that one.
The king of Tampa, Brett McMurphy. Maybe he comes down there and hangs out with you. Action Network's Brett McMurphy. You can see all his tweets. You can go to actionnetwork.com and see all of his work there as well. Brett, we always appreciate your time. We learn something every time. We appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, you too, guys. And thanks for not bringing up Miami for Gino.
He wants
There's a bad call on you, Brett.
He wants you to eat some crow, that's for sure. We're going to make some picks coming up next here on ESPNU Radio, Sirius XM, Channel 84. It's time to wrap things up on Touchdown Radio Tailgate on ESPNU Radio, Sirius XM, Channel 84. He's Gino. I'm Taylor. We're going to make some picks here in just a second. Gino, first, my heart is broken for what's happened in the state of Virginia in the last couple of weeks. And I think all of us have been just devastated by the news of the 3 young men that lost their lives that played for the Virginia football program who were senselessly murdered on that bus. Virginia ended up not playing any more football after that happened, canceling their games against Coastal Carolina and Virginia Tech. There aren't any words to describe the devastation that entire community is feeling, especially those families.
Yeah, no question. It's just, brings up terrible memories. I had a teammate my freshman year, Kevin Gibbs, a great running back, ended up, died in a car accident, and, bring back memories of that, what happened after, and just trying to console teammates and, guys that you just kind of met and you were buddies with, and you're a freshman together. And it's just it's tragic.
It really is. Nick Howell is the Vanderbilt defensive coordinator, Gino. He was the Virginia defensive coordinator the last few years. Last week when Vanderbilt beat Florida, he wore a Virginia pullover. He didn't wear a Vanderbilt one. He wore a Virginia one. He was so emotional the last few days. I can't imagine what all they're going through. But we're certainly thinking about them, and please know how much they mean to us. Hard times for them, and certainly want to lean on them and love on them as much as we can these days. Let's get to the picks here in week number 13 of the college football season. Last week, Torretta picked the Montana Grizzlies, and he lost. He also picked the Utah Utes and my Oregon Ducks.
No, did I take the Utes?
You sure did, and I took the Ducks.
I don't think so. We better check the video.
We will. We'll just check the audio. We both lost in Bedlam. The Pokes Pokes have been letting us down all year.
I took the gutty little Bruins. I know that was another loss for me.
Yeah, so you are one down going into the last week of the season.
Boy.
The Egg Bowl on Thursday night. Number 20 Ole Miss versus Mississippi State. Ole Miss is a 2.5-point favorite in the game. Oh, this is tough because I just wonder if all this stuff that's going on with Lane Kiffin this week, a short week after getting blown out by Arkansas, is going to matter. I'm saying yes, it does. I'm taking Mississippi State on the road in Oxford.
Man, I thought I was going to pick up one on you there, but you know what? I'm going to change my pick. I'm going to say the opposite. I'm going to say the refocus and the all of that outside noise.
you were ready to say the other.
Lane Kiffin rights the ship.
All right. Let's go next to the American Conference Championship play-in game. The winner of this game hosts the American Championship game next week, most likely against UCF if the Knights can beat the Bulls. I'm talking about number 19 Tulane at number 24 Cincinnati. The Bearcats are slight 2-point favorites in this game. Gino, who are you picking?
I went with Tulane earlier and they let me down, so I don't like to do that twice. I've leaned towards the home team, which has generally got me in the right direction. So I'm going to take Cincinnati at home.
I am taking the Wave on the road, taking road underdogs, back-to-back picks to start the week. Let's go to the Palmetto State in the Palmetto Bowl. South Carolina has not won this game since 2013. They're 7-4. They're coming off the thrilling win against Tennessee. They're playing at number 8 Clemson, who's a 14.5-point favorite on Saturday. This game is a noon kick. I'm going to take Clemson in this game. I think their defense makes the difference. Tennessee doesn't have much defense these days. Clemson does. I'll take Clemson to beat the Gamecocks, but I think the Gamecocks keep it close.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I think this defense that Clemson trots out there is a lot better than the one that South Carolina faced last weekend. But yeah, I'd take the home squad in Clemson.
All right, next up, let's go to the Civil War. I have broadcast this game for Touchdown Radio in Corvallis from the National Radio Closet. Oregon at Oregon State.
Here they have a new booth area, Taylor.
3:30 on ABC. The Ducks come in as 3-point favorites on the road. Who do you like?
I'm going to take the home underdog there. I'm taking the Beavs. I'm taking Oregon State. I just think they're playing well. Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll change my pick. No, I'll go with Oregon State.
I am.
You see how this works, folks? I just try to take something different.
Well, the Beavs are having a great season, and they've really improved their program. And I worry too about Bo Nix and his health coming into this game. I don't think he's 100%. So I'm going to take the Beavs to win that one. Let's go next to. Let's see which one we want to pick. Let's go Notre Dame USC next. Number 15 Notre Dame is a 5.5-point underdog at number 6 USC. On Saturday night. Can't figure out why USC is such a slight favorite here. I'm taking the guy that I think is the Heisman favorite. I know that most of the people out there are still saying that Stroud is the favorite to Ohio State. I think it's Caleb Williams right now. I'm taking Caleb and USC to beat the Irish.
Yeah, I do as well. And I said this a couple of weeks ago, and his season reminiscent of Carson Palmer. And, you know, he would have that opportunity. And if he lights it up against Notre Dame, there's going to be a lot of people watching that game, a lot of fans or anti-fans of Notre Dame. And USC is probably one of the best turnaround stories of college football this year. And I think that, you know, he's going to have an opportunity because his defense isn't very good. They're going to have to put up a lot of points to win that game.
A Miami guy doesn't take Notre Dame, just for the record. Just want to state that. Number 13, Washington is playing at Washington State in the Apple Cup, and the Puppies are 2-point favorites on the road at the Cougs. Who do you like in this one? Late kick, Pac-12 after dark, 10:30 Saturday night.
Oh, you know, I like Penix. I like the Huskies there. I think that yeah, I'll go with the Huskies.
Yeah, I'm going to go against the Dogs. I'm going to take the Cougs here in this game and say that they pull off the slight upset at home. Listen, if Oregon loses to Oregon State, Washington loses to Washington State, Utah could still find their way into the Pac-12 championship game against the SC next week. 2 more to pick, and I think this is ridiculous that it's not for the Sun Belt Division title because JMU's not eligible because it's their first season in the Sun Belt. Coastal Carolina inexplicably is not in the top 25. They're 23rd in the AP. They're playing at James Madison Saturday on ESPNU at noon. I am still taking the Chanticleers after all those things I said about JMU, though.
I agree with you. The crazy thing with the rules, you can transfer and you can play immediately. A team actually moves up a level,
and you can't go to a bowl game.
The benefits of playing well. It makes absolutely zero sense. Make it make sense, NC2A.
Finally, number 2 Ohio State versus number 3 Michigan. It's a noon kick on Fox on Saturday. The Buckeyes are 7.5-point favorites in this game over the Michigan Wolverines. Could be the game of the year, Gino, in college football. Who do you like?
God, how many times has the game of the century been billed as game of the century at the start of the year, and it actually we delivers with 2 undefeated teams? But I'm taking the home team, and I think you like Williams. I think Stroud's going to light up Michigan, and I think that he's going to do a la Bryce Young of last year, put one arm on that trophy and say, not so fast. I'm taking this one home with me this year.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think he'll be terrific in this game. There's a revenge factor after what happened in this game in the snow in Ann Arbor last year. I say Ohio State convincingly beats Michigan in this game. And I think it goes down to Stroud and Williams the following week when they play championship games in their respective conferences to determine who wins the Heisman Trophy. So should be fun. Happy Thanksgiving, my friend. Thankful for you. And we'll look forward to talking about all this next week as we get ready for the conference championship games. You've been listening to Touchdown Radio Tailgate on ESPNU Radio, Sirius XM, Channel 84.